Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today we're going to be taking another look at Insurgency. I did some videos on this way back in the day when it first came out, and it's gone through quite a few changes since then, and it's seen a free DLC. This is probably the best $15 you can spend on Steam right now, in my opinion, just in relation to what you actually get for 15 bucks, and the fact that they've been releasing all their DLC completely free of charge. And check out that sexy scope rendering. Do you notice how the environment around the scope is not zoomed in, where the scope itself is actually zoomed in? This is pretty much the only game I know of that does scope rendering to this quality, and it's very hard to do because you essentially have to render the environment twice, which means you kind of have to tone down the graphics a bit, otherwise your frame rate is just going to chug every time you use a magnified optic weapon. But oh man, if they could figure out how to replicate that effect for games like Battlefield, it would be so freaking cool. Now, one cool thing that's changed since the last time I played it is right now I'm using a SIG SG553, I believe, and this is basically a weapon skin that you can just download in the Steam Workshop. It's totally supported by the game, and it doesn't actually cost any money. And it really is just a skin in that it's replacing the AKS right now, so it's got the exact same weapon properties as an AKS, but it looks like a SIG, which is cool if you want a little bit of weapon variety when you play the game. Now, I don't believe other players will see this skin unless they have it installed on their version of Insurgency. Now, if you've never played this game before, there are some things you should probably know before you get into it. The game itself is very easy to learn. The controls are very basic. You don't need some sort of extended keyboard to map all these crazy key bindings. It is very realistic in terms of the weapon damage model, but it's not a sim game in terms of having like 10 different forms of crouch or stances. You have crouch, prone, run, walk. It's all pretty basic, and you should be able to learn the controls very quickly if you're familiar with other shooters on the PC. And because the shooter mechanics are very realistic, meaning you only need 1 to 2 shots generally to kill your opponent, it means there isn't a lot of learning in terms of weapon recoil and stuff like that, because you don't really need to control the recoil. You just shoot them once and they die. It's why I'm firing a lot of my weapons on semi-automatic, because you don't really need to go full auto in this game. Semi-auto conserves your ammo a bit better, and you can take out a lot more targets with just 1 magazine. But because of this damage model, it means that you have to be very sneaky and very careful when you move around any of the multiplayer maps, which means that basically your skill level and how proficient you are in this game is going to be almost entirely dependent on your knowledge of each map, and some of the maps are very complicated, and that part of the game can be frustrating when you first get into it because there are no kill cams. So basically you're just sitting there, and if you die, you don't know where you got shot from, so you can try pushing the same lane and you might die to the exact same spot again, and you will have no idea where the shots came from unless you can try and figure it out based on the sound and stuff like that. So not only are the maps a little bit complicated and tricky to learn, but you're not going to learn them quickly because of the lack of kill cams. And in this large open map here, somebody can literally be prone at any point in the map and take you out with 1 shot. So it's not like games like Battlefield where you absolutely have to have cover all the time. Sometimes if you're just not moving and you take some shots and people don't know where you're shooting from, you can still do a lot of damage. So it's kind of interesting in that sense where you're not necessarily bound to buildings and cover as much as you might be in other games. One thing that I love about the game is the realistic weapon sounds, the weapon mechanics, and the particle effects when you shoot. You'll notice when your shots hit any surface that the appropriate amount of smoke and dust goes flying up into the air based on what you shot. And it creates a really realistic presence on the battlefield. When RPGs fly across the battlefield and explode, it looks very, very realistic, and it's something that I don't think any other game has really achieved on the same level. And that's not to say that the graphics are amazing in this game. It is using the Source engine. Some of the maps look really good, some of the maps don't look so good. A lot of it is very basically modeled and basically textured, and the soldier models don't look that great overall, but the particle effects and the overall attention to detail really do this game justice. It's the kind of game where if it actually did have maybe a little bit more finesse with some of the artwork and some of the soldier animations and models, it could be right up there with some of the better looking games out right now. And if you're someone who has an appreciation for a shooter that actually looks realistic in the middle of firefights, not all done up Hollywood style, but actually has realistic looking effects, then I'm sure this game actually really will appeal to you in a very big way. The game modes are pretty fun. I think the best one right now, at least in my opinion, is Push, where it's basically the equivalent of Battlefield's Rush. You have to push through some pretty narrow and dangerous environments where the enemy team can just camp and wait for you. And that is one of the things you have to be prepared for in this game, because the damage model is so high, it really does reward the camping playstyle. In games where you have a longer time to kill, basically if somebody's camping, somebody can run into a room and probably take them out using their movement to dodge shots and hit the camper very easily. But because you have pretty much a 1 to 2 shot time to kill in this game, campers have a huge advantage. And obviously the counter to that is to throw a grenade into a room where somebody's camping. Grenades will kill people very easily, but it does create a situation where you're basically pushing into rooms, getting killed by campers, and then the guys behind you throw grenades into the room and kill the campers. It's very camp heavy and very grenade heavy, which at times can get annoying. Is that a fault of game design? Not necessarily if you're trying to make a game that has very realistic combat, because that's what most people would do in realistic combat, especially if they're getting slaughtered out on the streets, is you just go back into a building, wait for somebody to come in and engage them in extremely close quarters where you have the advantage because you know exactly what area they're going to come in from. So you can basically win the firefight. And that is something that would happen in real life where the situation's very similar to this game. So they've done a great job at creating realistic combat. The only problem is that that can mean it's going to be very camp heavy combat. Now, one significant change that's new for me is the fact that there's actually a kill feed in the game now. Initially when you played Insurgency, there was no kill feed and you just had to hope that you got the guy, or if you took a shot and you didn't see the guy peeking out of the window anymore, you just had to assume it was a kill, or literally go and investigate to see if it was a kill. I have to say, as a gamer, it is much more satisfying now seeing when I get the kill and just knowing. I know it's not a realistic element to the game, but that's the problem with milsim games or realistic combat shooters, is it is a game at the end of the day, and you do have to make some concessions to actually make the game a little bit more fun or pleasing to play. As for the experience that Insurgency offers, there's nothing else out there like this. If you're really craving for a milsim type shooter that doesn't make you walk for 10 miles to get into combat, then this is it. As always, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know if you want to see more Insurgency gameplay on this channel, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.